I felt exploited. I felt trapped. I felt helpless.
A dramatic final showdown before the jury.
I felt my basic rights were being stolen. I felt I was being raped.
These knives show his intent to kill. And now is my final time to speak for her. That is my job, my duty, my privilege.
But in the end, the jury needed little time to find Muzammil Hassan guilty. News 4's live team coverage starts right now.
And good evening, everyone. It took almost 2 years to bring to trial and 3 weeks of drawn-out, dramatic, and deeply disturbing testimony.
But a jury of 8 men and 4 women needed less than an hour to find Muzammil Hassan guilty of second-degree murder in the beheading of his wife.
News 4's Lori Schultz has been keeping you connected to this trial since day one. She begins our team coverage tonight.
There's a disconnect between what the outside world is seeing and what's happening privately.
With more than 6 armed deputies seated in the courtroom, Muzammil Hassan stood before the jury and once again painted himself as the victim.
The prosecution has never asked the question, who started it? They never asked the question, who started it? That is the core question that needs to be answered.
In his 2-hour closing, he told jurors again that he was the victim of battered spouse syndrome and that he feared his wife. On the night of the slaying, he believed that she was armed with a knife. He likened his marriage to living with a terrorist.
This was torture, not love. This was torment, not love. I felt my basic rights were being stolen. I felt I was being raped.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a divorce case. This is a murder case.
Prosecutor Colleen Curtin Gable revealed in her closing that Asia might have been conscious when the defendant started to behead her. She showed more disturbing photos of the 47 stab wounds to Asia's torso and the bloody decapitation.
It shouldn't have taken until after the 10th, after the 20th, after the 30th stab wound to realize she wasn't a threat.
Prosecutors had argued that the defendant lured his wife to her death because she dared to file for a divorce days earlier. Curtin Gable choked back tears toward the end of her summation.
And now is my final time to speak for her. That is my job. It is time for this defendant to get his due.
The jury deliberated for only about 50 minutes, convicting the defendant on second-degree murder.
Mr. Hassan was quiet. He listened to the jury, accepted their verdict, and again, he has legal remedies after that.
Immediately after the verdict, Hassan was handcuffed and hauled away to the Erie County Holding Center. He is expected to file an appeal. And the defendant is scheduled to return to court on March 9th. That's when he'll be sentenced. He faces a state prison term of 25 years to life.
Now, Laura, you've been covering this trial since day one, right from the very beginning. What was it like to be in the courtroom this afternoon for closing arguments?
You know, you really did get a different feel for sure today. I mean, first with the defendant, I mean, he's clearly fighting for his life. He had to make a great impression for this jury, and he really tried to do so. You really got the sense that he truly believed that he's the victim in this case. And, you know, it was very interesting just to hear his remarks and just to see him standing there. What really threw me was Prosecutor Colleen Curtin Gable. She's been firm, you know, this whole trial, very, very strong. And all of a sudden you hear her at the very end, you know, kind of a crack in her voice, as if she's going to start to cry and tear up. And people around me, spectators in front, were tearing up and sniffling for some time after that.
Right. What about the jury as Hassan is facing them for 2 hours, right, delivering his summations? What about them?
Yeah, you know, the judge gave him 2 hours and he used up all of that time, which was really interesting. The first 30 minutes, they were fixated right on him. And then he started to drift a little bit and ramble on saying like evil dragon and patriot religion, and just he brought into different vocabulary, which I think kind of lost them a little bit. And also there were a lot of delays too, because he paused a lot during his closing. So, you know, hard to say what they were thinking, but you could see them fidgeting at times, especially as we got on to the hour, hour and a half, 2 hours.
Lori, we've appreciated your insight and your blogging from inside the courtroom. I know a lot of viewers have come to appreciate it as well.
Thank you. Thanks.
Now, Prosecutor Colleen Curtin Gable was the face of the people in this trial and the voice for the victim, Asia Hassan. As
News 4's Michelle McClintock reports, her pursuit of justice paid off with a verdict at lightning speed.
It took them nearly 4 days to go through 22 witnesses and prove our case.
A case that showed that Muzamil Hassan was a cold-blooded murderer who savagely beheaded his wife because she was going to leave him. It may have seemed to the general public that this was an open and shut case, but prosecutors never assumed that it would be a verdict easily handed to them, despite a mountain of evidence and witnesses to back their argument. Colleen Curtin Gable was emotional during her summation. This is a case she's been working on since the night Asiya Zubair was brutally killed.
And there comes a point where, although you look at cases very clinically so that you can do your job, that you do think of the victim, the person that she was, the person she could have been, the children she left behind, and the person who did this to her. And it does bring out an emotional reaction in you. You can't help it.
Jurors saw the brutal crime scene photos for the first time.
The viciousness and the savageness of this crime. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the pictures. They speak 1,000 words.
Prosecutors talked about how the people's case actually benefited from some of Hassan's cross-examination.
Everything Dr. Horowitz said supported our theory of the case, and what really sort of surprised me was the defendant was reacting as though he was getting information that would benefit him.
Curtin Gable says it's the first time she was up against a pro se attorney. Hassan's inexperience and lack of courtroom etiquette showed, often frustrating the prosecution.
Maybe I got a little heated at times, but I think he deserved it.
Now, many are wondering why the prosecution didn't seek a murder in the first-degree charge. Well, that's because in New York State, the charge would have to include an additional aggravating factor, such as a contract killing or the killing of a police officer. Don and Jackie.
Well, Michelle, you were our eyes and ears in the courtroom when the verdict was actually read today. Could you see Hassan, and what was his reaction?
Well, both the defense and the prosecution were facing the judge, so the courtroom really only saw him from behind. He was seated and surrounded by several court officers and didn't seem to have much of a reaction at all, which did surprise many because this trial was filled with so many twists and turns. So pretty anticlimactic, actually.
All right. Thank you, Michelle.
And there wasn't an empty seat in the House in that courtroom as the trial reached its climax. News 4's George Rickard has reaction now from Western New Yorkers captivated by the courtroom drama.
I'm just glad that he was found guilty.
Outside the 7-Eleven that Hassan's used to own in Orchard Park, people weren't surprised at the quick verdict.
I wasn't surprised about that. It seemed like it was pretty much a slam dunk from the start that he would be found guilty.
He thought he was better off representing himself, and his testimonies were against him pretty much. But I don't think any other defense attorney could have saved him either. Did the crime, do the time.
News 4's legal analyst Terry Connors thinks Hassan's decision to represent himself was an attempt to humanize himself and let the jury see his vulnerabilities.
In terms of a legal defense, conforming to the requirements of the law, he did nothing right. He wasn't able to get his proof in that would support his defense. He didn't meet the standard criteria that's required before you can advocate that kind of a defense. So from that standpoint, really, no, he didn't help himself at all.
I don't think any of us were convinced that he resembles a victim.
I know what it feels like to be abused.
Nashia Dubeishi is a domestic violence survivor herself who came to watch some of this trial. She believes Asiya was just trying to save herself and the kids.
And being subjected to abuse like that, you're alone. You're alone inside your house. And you're ashamed because you don't want anybody to know that you're being abused.
Also observing from the courtroom today was a representative of the Family Justice Center in Buffalo, which helps women escape domestic violence situations. You can find their link on WIVB.com. Reporting live, George Rickard, News 4 at 11.
So what's next? As Lori mentioned earlier, Hassan faces up to 25 years to life in prison when he's sentenced on March 9th. His legal advisor, Jeremy Schwartz, says he plans to appeal. And you can watch today's closing arguments in their entirety, along with all our coverage of the trial on WIVB.com.
Also tonight, police in East Aurora have charged 2 men with raping a 12-year-old girl. Detectives tell News 4's Milas Hairston the suspects met the victim on a social networking website.
East Aurora police tell me 19-year-old Robert Bogas Jr. of Amherst admits having sex with a 12-year-old East Aurora girl. Police say he used the website myyearbook.com to meet the child. Authorities say the same is true for 25-year-old Stephen Ziamek of Depew. The lead investigator tells me the girl became online friends with the men, exchanged phone numbers, and eventually agreed to have them come individually to her home for sex. Police tell me the sexual encounter started late last year, and on at least one occasion, the child's parents were home but had no idea what was going on. Police tell me the girl would sometimes sneak the men into her home and that she was raped at least 4 times since October. This all came to an end when one of the child's neighbors noticed a man approaching the house when the girl's parents weren't home and called police. Robert Bogas Jr. and Stephen Ziamek are both charged with first-degree rape and predatory sexual assault against a child. Miles Hairston, News 4.
Investigators are trying to solve a puzzling mystery surrounding a deadly fire in Alden. Rescuers pulled a man from a burning hole on Eubauer Road yesterday. He had suffered burns over 90% of his body, and no one was living at the home, and police do not know why the man was inside. But moments before firefighters arrived, a neighbor noticed suspicious activity around the home.
Just prior to seeing the smoke, he had seen a car pull in the driveway at the house and observed a single subject get out of the car, walk around the house, and enter the house through what looked to be a back window.
Well, the victim died today at ECMC. Police are not releasing his name.
A bill that called for banning the sale of puppies in pet stores in Amherst will not become law. Tonight, the town attorney told the board it does not have the power to enact such a law. It must come from Albany. Supporters say the bill was designed to help fight puppy mills. The owner of the town's only pet store, Steve's Wonderful World of Pets, says all of his dogs come from a reputable breeder. President Obama is calling on big business to show Americans the money. His message to corporate America is next. Plus this. The losses pile up from last week's crippling winter storms. And Super Bowl 45 sets a new record.
Some bone-chilling cold and blowing snow ahead of a pattern change. I'll have the details coming right up.
You're watching WIVB TV, proudly serving Buffalo, the Niagara Frontier, and all of Western New York. With Jackie Walker, Don Postles, sports with John Murphy, and weather with meteorologist Don Paul. Now, live from Channel 4 in Buffalo, keeping you connected. This is News 4 at 11.
The group Human Rights Watch says almost 300 people have been killed since the uprising against the Egyptian government began 2 weeks ago. That count is based on visits to 7 hospitals in Cairo and surrounding cities. It is expected to rise. President Hosni Mubarak announced last week that he will step down later this year.
President Obama is calling on American business leaders to, quote, get in the game. The president told the U.S. Chamber of Commerce today the U.S. companies have a responsibility to help the economy. He wants top executives to spend their almost $2 trillion in profits creating jobs.
They have to be shared by American workers, who need to know that expanding trade and opening markets will lift their standards of living as well as your bottom line.
The president is pledging to help American businesses compete by pushing for more exports and making changes in the corporate tax code.
Well, business is very good at Ford. The nation's #2 automaker says its sales are so strong right now, it's stepping up production, making 13% more cars and trucks from now until the end of March. Sales at Ford rose 9% last month. Well, last week's winter storms took a $6 million toll on the nation's airlines. Almost 20,000 flights were canceled last week alone, the most since the government began keeping records in 1987.
If you weren't watching the Super Bowl yesterday, what were you watching? For the second straight year, the Super Bowl has set a new ratings record. An estimated 111 million Americans watched the Packers outlast Pittsburgh. That's almost 5 million more viewers than last year. And the series finale of MASH, which held the most watched title for some 27 years, now slips to #3.
It helped that it was really a competitive game right up to the end.
Very exciting, yeah.
And Don Paul got a break long enough to watch the Super Bowl, but now we've got snow again, Don.
Yeah, winter is back for this week, and then there are the long advertised changes in the pattern I've been talking about since the week before last week. They're still on the way, but you're going to have to grit the chattering teeth you'll have when you walk out the door in the morning for a few days yet, because we are getting our temperatures into a tumbling mode tonight. And while these are not huge amounts of snow coming down, they're more than enough to get roads snow covered and slippery. They are right now. This trailing edge of the snow should be just east of Buffalo by about 7 a.m. In the meantime, the State College National Weather Service office has a winter weather advisory up for our Pennsylvania viewing area. But so there's no confusion, I added slick roads outside of the advisory area because we have them. They're not quite advisory level in terms of depth of snow, but there's that trailing edge, and we're still seeing generally light snow, a few pockets where it's slightly heavier, but note there is eastward progression to that trailing edge of the steadier snow. And then there's a very weak lake response in this bitterly cold air mass that's moving in, and what's really going to make it bitter is the wind that will be picking up during the day tomorrow. Currently at the airport, we're at the day's low now, 23 degrees with a wind chill temperature of 11 because the wind has become significant. Tomorrow it's going to be averaging 15 to occasionally 25, maybe a few stronger gusts. And that wind chill will occasionally have a minus sign in front of it during the afternoon and will be sub-zero tomorrow night and Wednesday. Today's high, we still had that balmy touch to the air during the day, 34, 23 the low, and our snowfall total at the National Weather Service, our official recording site for Buffalo, 1.4 inches. We're now up to 76.8 inches for the season, where normal is 67.8. And of course, South Buffalo and Depew and Lancaster, thanks to that December lake effect storm, had a lot more of a total than that. Here are the wind speeds, still windy up in Toronto, and the wind tomorrow will be sufficient with the bitterly cold air in place to blow the snow around, especially on north-south roads. So I'm not talking about true whiteouts, but there are going to be sudden patches of slippery surface. You're driving along and all of a sudden there's snow on the 990, on the 219, on Millersport, the usual trouble spots. Here are the current readings, already down to 18 in Toronto, and the wind chill temperatures, 11 and 8 here, but down to 1 in Toronto, and that's where we're headed. You can see the coldest there is where that cold shade of gray is, but readings will be in the teens at best tomorrow. The coldest air over the northern plains right now, there's only one warm spot, the southern quarter of Florida. Now, for tonight, slippery roads. The morning commute, still some slippery roads out there, and then as the morning progresses, winds pick up and start producing some blowing snow with that bitter wind chill. Most of the snow falling tomorrow afternoon will be in the hills, and the winds actually increase tomorrow night and Wednesday, so the blowing snow will actually worsen tomorrow night and Wednesday. Here's your Weather Watch forecast. Slick roads, steady light snow, much colder. Morning accumulations by 7 a.m., 1 to 3 inches, 11 to 14. Tomorrow, a bitter wind chill, some scattered snow showers with blowing snow. Most of the snow winding down on the Niagara frontier. 11 to 15, the wind chill averaging 0 to 5 below tomorrow, and about 10 below 0 tomorrow night as the winds increase to 15 to 30, 20 to 30 on Wednesday. Still bitterly cold on Thursday, but during the weekend, temperatures start to moderate some. I've shaved a few degrees off, but we should be in the 30s most of next week. Not the teens, not the 20s.
Good.
Okay.
Well, the Super Bowl MVP is in the Sunshine State. Hear why next on News 4. Plus, the mayor of Niagara Falls has some hardware for James Starks.
Another day for the Bulls on Wall Street. The Dow closed up 69 points. The S&P 500 gained 8. NASDAQ climbed 14.
Is doing right now as
a Super Bowl champ is a hometown hero in the honeymoon capital. Niagara Falls native and former UB football star James Starks rushed for 52 yards against the league's toughest defense. Several relatives were at the game to cheer him on. Niagara Falls Mayor Paul Deister is giving Starks the key to the city when he returns home after all the Super Bowl celebrations.
Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers is celebrating his Super Bowl win and selection as the MVP in the happiest place on earth. Moments after Super Bowl 45, Rodgers shouted those famous words, "I'm going to Disney World." And the folks at Disney World pulled out all the stops with a ticker tape parade down Main Street, USA in the Magic Kingdom today. This is the 25th year of those "I'm going to Disney World" commercials.
Now, News 4 continues with the latest in sports.
If all goes as planned, Terry Pegula should be at the helm of the Buffalo Sabres 6 days before the trade deadline. He told me over the weekend the plan for his purchase of the team is to be completed 2 weeks from tomorrow, February 22nd. Sabres sources have confirmed that date as the target date for transfer of the hockey franchise. Pegula told me Saturday night he's excited about assuming ownership of the team, and he plans on winning a Stanley Cup in Buffalo, and then, in his words, winning another one. You can read about my conversation with Pegula on the Channel 4 website. Check out the sports blog on WMV. WIVB.com. Pegula's hockey club worked out at HSBC Arena today before they left for a 2-game road trip. They have turned the corner, 10 wins in their last 15 games, but they're still on the outside of the playoff picture looking in. And the players acknowledge, as well as they played, they've still got some more work to do.
We found our game here. We're playing good hockey. You know, now for us, the most important thing is just to stay confident. You know, when we're up like in Pittsburgh, you know, just to keep the pedal down and then keep going for the next goal like we did against Toronto, and then, you know, not wait to win. You know, we got to go out there and deserve to win, and I think if we do that, we'll have a good chance for the playoffs.
Sabres started their 2-game Florida trip with a game in Tampa Bay tomorrow night. Atlanta's one of the teams they're chasing. Thrashers in Toronto tonight, where they honored former Leafs great Darryl Sittler 35 years ago tonight, his 10-point game. Atlanta had a 2-0 lead. Toronto fights back. Second period, that's Clark MacArthur tucks it in from the side. 3-3 game, and then look at this giveaway in the third. Dustin Byfuglien cops it up to Nikolai Kuleman, who scores. Toronto roars back for a 5-4 win over the Thrashers. 9th place Atlanta stays 5 points ahead of Buffalo. Niagara Falls native James Starks did not even play until week 12 of the NFL season, but once he started playing, he had a major role to play for the Green Bay Packers. Starks will be sized up for a Super Bowl ring after last night's Packers victory. He carried the ball 11 times for 52 yards, another solid postseason performance for the UB product. After the game, he had words of praise for his teammate, Super Bowl MVP Aaron Rodgers.
He's just a great leader. He's been doing it all year. Having fun out there, just keeping our composure, telling us to relax. We've been through it. We've been through it all. So he's a great captain, a great quarterback.
Starks and the Packers flew home to Green Bay today, and they were met by thousands of cheering cheeseheads. They'll hold a formal return to Titletown rally at Lambeau Field tomorrow afternoon. High school hoops, UB coach Reggie Witherspoon in the stands, two of the top teams in the area, Williamsville North and Jamestown. The Red Raiders with the ball. Beautiful quick move down the baseline. Darren Butts, the reverse layup. Butts had 25 for Jamestown. Williamsville North, the inbounds play. It is Edwin Young who lays it in. He had a big game, 14 points, 12 rebounds, but freshman Sterling Taplin had 34. North goes to overtime, knocks off Jamestown 79-75. Jamestown's first loss in league play. They are 11-3 overall. Pretty good game, two of the best teams in the area.
Thanks, John.
Yep.
We'll have your winning lottery numbers when we come back.
Here they are, tonight's winning lottery numbers. The daily is 210, the win 4, 4016. The take 5, 8, 15, 17, 25, 37.
Well, only a little blowing snow at 7 a.m. The winds won't have come up that much yet. Steady snow exiting east of Buffalo. Slick spots on the roads, 11 to 14. The wind chill 0 to 5 above in the morning and 5 below in the afternoon. And Mike Syka will have the latest in the morning.
We're losing ground tomorrow,
yes.
rapidly. Well, News 4 is keeping you connected to the latest news, weather, and sports on WIVB.com. The Wake Up Crew will be right here at 5 a.m. Thanks for being with us, and have a great night.